They conveyed to the world that the British Empire was built upon ships, soldiers, and colonies. However, the true engine driving its global dominance was far quieter and concealed behind marble facades and mahogany tables. It was a financial system unlike anything seen before, one that turned debts into power and money into an empire. Britain did not merely conquer through muskets and cannons. It expanded its reach through credit. London bankers transformed war, trade, and even famine into tools of financial expansion. The tale of how British bankers funded their imperial ambitions is a narrative of the intertwining of wealth and authority, a system that continues to shape the world you inhabit today. To comprehend this intricate web of finance and power, we must journey back to the 17th century when England was not yet the formidable empire we envision in modern times. At that period, Spain and Portugal held vast overseas territories, France was on the rise, and the Dutch Republic dominated global commerce thanks to its formidable navy and sophisticated financial markets. In stark contrast, England appeared as a small, fragmented nation grappling with perpetual financial crises. Wars against France and the Netherlands had ravaged its treasury. Monarchs found themselves sinking into monumental debts, often defaulting on their obligations, which deterred potential creditors from extending their support. Take, for instance, the War of Spanish Succession in the early 18th century. Britain, a relatively small island nation, managed to sustain armies on foreign soil and maintain a naval fleet at sea for over a decade. The secret behind this endurance was not an abundance of resources compared to France or Spain. It stemmed from Britain's ability to finance warfare through an uninterrupted flow of loans backed by the Bank of England. Investors recognized that purchasing bonds presented a secure opportunity. Tax revenues generated from trade and industry, particularly the increasing income from customs duties, ensured repayment. In stark contrast, France repeatedly declared bankruptcy, undermining confidence among investors and forcing the government to pay exorbitant interest rates. Warfare had always been associated with muskets and manpower, but now it also revolved around the intricacies of bond markets. Britain's capacity to ensnare its adversaries in debt allowed it to outlast them in prolonged conflicts. This financial system continued to solidify throughout the 18th century. By the onset of the 7 Years' War in the 1750s, Britain was engaging in unprecedented levels of borrowing. It amassed over £100 million, an astronomical figure for that era, to fund military campaigns across North America, the Caribbean, Africa, and India. Although France theoretically possessed greater size and wealth, it found itself unable to keep pace with Britain's financial might. The war devastated French finances, laying the groundwork for a financial crisis that would ultimately spiral into the French Revolution. Meanwhile, Britain emerged from these conflicts with a global empire firmly established. Crucially, it also fostered a domestic class of investors who amassed fortunes from reliable interest payments on government bonds. War transcended mere patriotic duty. It became a lucrative financial venture instead. Yet warfare represented only one facet of Britain's economic strategy. Trade constituted another essential pillar of its financial empire. The 18th century witnessed an expansion in chartered companies, most notably the infamous East India Company. This entity was far more than just a standard trading firm. It was a hybrid organization, part corporation and part governmental entity that operated with military capabilities as well. Investors based in London eagerly purchased shares in anticipation of dividends drawn from lucrative trades in spices, textiles, and eventually opium. This intricate interplay between war financing and mercantile expansion propelled Britain into an era of unprecedented prosperity and influence on the world stage. As British bankers cemented their roles at the heart of this evolving economy, they not only navigated but actively shaped the dynamics that would define global trade for generations to come. The profits accrued were not merely the result of conquests. They stemmed from a complex web of financial maneuvering. The East India Company established private armies, bribed local rulers, and imposed taxes on millions of Indian inhabitants. The wealth generated from these activities flowed back into the heart of London, enriching bankers and bondholders alike. This financial system created a self-perpetuating cycle. Britain borrowed extensively to fund its military campaigns, while victories abroad expanded trade opportunities. Increased trade led to customs duties and corporate profits that helped to repay the debts incurred. This repayment process in turn stimulated further borrowing, creating a reinforcing loop between credit, commerce, and conquest. While it might have appeared that admirals and generals were at the helm of the British Empire, the true architects behind its expansion were the bankers who facilitated the flow of credit. By the dawn of the 19th century, this intricate system reached unprecedented heights. Consider the Napoleonic Wars, a lengthy conflict lasting over 2 decades that swept across Europe. France under Napoleon was formidable yet faced significant financial instability. He relied heavily on plunder and forced tributes from conquered lands to sustain his ambitions. In contrast, Britain managed to continuously attract funds from investors on the London bond market, amassing more than £600 million during these tumultuous years. At one point, interest payments on this staggering debt accounted for nearly half of Britain's governmental expenditures. Nevertheless, investors remained eager to lend money, buoyed by confidence in Britain's extensive trading networks and its burgeoning industrial economy, which promised to cover these costs. This faith in Britain's financial resilience proved well-founded. Not only did Britain triumph over Napoleon on battlefields across Europe, but it also emerged victorious in financial realms. However, as history often reveals, financing an empire involves more than just defeating external adversaries. It necessitates internal control as well. British taxpayers bore the burden of debt repayments through taxes levied on everyday goods like tea, sugar, and tobacco. Ordinary citizens found themselves paying elevated prices so that bondholders could receive their interest payments without interruption. Meanwhile, bankers grew increasingly powerful, able to dictate terms to governments desperate for funds. By the late 17th century, England's credit situation had reached a critical juncture. Without access to funds, it was impossible to maintain a standing army, build a robust navy, or project any semblance of strength on the international stage. Yet in 1694, a pivotal event occurred that would irrevocably alter the trajectory of Britain's future. The narrative of economic history illustrates that money and power are intertwined rather than distinct forces. They operate as a unified entity within society. Britain perfected this formula, leveraging debt as a tool for dominance while utilizing trade as fuel and finance as the engine driving imperial ambitions forward. As Britain expanded its influence throughout the 19th century, it became clear that finances had begun to eclipse military might in significance. In essence, this era marked a transformation where economic strategies played an equally crucial role alongside military endeavors in shaping global dynamics. The British Empire's reliance on sophisticated financial tactics forged pathways for expansion that would ultimately leave lasting impacts on world history, demonstrating how interconnected trade networks and fiscal policies can serve as potent instruments for national advancement and hegemony. Conflicts continued to rage on, yet many of the genuine triumphs occurred in boardrooms and marketplaces. This was particularly evident in China during the Opium Wars, which at first glance seemed to revolve around trade restrictions. However, the underlying issues were fundamentally about wealth and power. The British Empire developed an insatiable appetite for Chinese tea, porcelain, and silk. The core problem was that China insisted on payment in silver, leading to a significant depletion of British reserves. To rectify this imbalance, British merchants, with the backing of financiers, began to flood the Chinese market with opium from India. This lucrative trade not only offset the burgeoning trade deficit, but also allowed silver to flow back into London's coffers. When the Chinese government attempted to curb the opium trade due to its devastating social impact, Britain retaliated by dispatching its naval fleet. The resulting confrontation led to a humiliating defeat for China, culminating in forced treaties that opened its ports and facilitated a substantial expansion of British-controlled commerce. Once again, profits from opium sales, shipping ventures, and banking fees streamed back into London, further entrenching the financial dominance of the empire. By the mid-19th century, Britain had transformed into not only a global workshop producing coal, steel, and textiles but also its own banker. The city of London emerged as the financial epicenter of the world economy. British banks financed infrastructure projects such as railroads in Argentina, mining operations in South Africa, and plantations throughout the Caribbean. The pound sterling became synonymous with international trade currency. In this intricate web of finance, British consuls and gunboats ensured that debts were settled promptly. Thus was born an empire built not merely on military might but also on meticulous accounting practices and credit agreements. This system meant that Britain's financial framework permeated everyday life for millions who would never set foot on British soil. The gold standard solidified this authority even further. By pegging its currency to gold at a fixed rate, Britain projected an image of stability and trustworthiness. Investors from across the globe flocked to acquire pounds sterling, confident in their ability to convert them into gold whenever desired. This reputation enabled Britain to secure inexpensive loans while providing extensive credit facilities and maintaining fiscal discipline throughout its vast empire. Countries seeking access to British capital often found themselves compelled to align their currencies and economic policies with London's expectations. Essentially, British bankers exported not just money but also monetary policy frameworks, establishing a system where financial literacy and adherence to regulations became prerequisites for participating in global trade. As these developments unfolded, they marked a profound shift in how nations interacted economically on a global scale. With Britain's influence spreading far beyond its shores, it became clear that control over financial systems could wield more power than traditional military conquests ever could. Consequently, those who understood these complex financial dynamics frequently gained an upper hand over others within international markets. In this intricate system, there emerged distinct winners and losers. For affluent investors in the bustling financial hub of London, it was a period characterized by unprecedented financial liberty and reliable returns. Conversely, for nations under colonial rule, this era often resembled a trap. Resources were systematically extracted, crippling debts imposed, and economies realigned to cater to imperial interests. The Parliament approved the establishment of what would become known as the Bank of England. On the surface, this idea seemed straightforward. Affluent investors would lend money to the Crown to finance its military endeavors against France, in exchange for government bonds offering a fixed interest rate. This initiative led to the creation of a central bank, an institution empowered to issue banknotes, safeguard deposits, and ensure repayment of loans taken out by the government. Take India as an example. It served as a significant source of tax revenue and raw materials for the British Empire, yet its people continually faced starvation. Crops that could have nourished millions were exported to satisfy global market demands instead. The profits reaped enriched the empire's bondholders, while countless individuals suffered from hunger and deprivation. This scenario starkly illustrated the ruthless logic underpinning the financial system. Efficiency for investors came at a catastrophic cost to vulnerable populations. As we delve deeper into history, this pattern becomes increasingly evident. Britain's global dominance was not solely the result of military prowess, but stemmed from a financial framework that transformed risk into opportunity and disasters into dividends. Wars that ravaged other nations ultimately filled the coffers of British bankers, while trade deficits that threatened resource depletion morphed into monopolies buttressed by military might. Even crises were frequently reframed as opportunities for financial proliferation. During the tumultuous 19th century, when the United States grappled with its own mounting debts, London financiers seized the moment by purchasing American bonds and injecting capital into railroads and infrastructure projects. In many respects, America's rise was financed by Britain, a poignant reminder that the empire's influence was equally tied to its creditors as it was to territorial control. Why does all of this matter in our contemporary world? The answer lies in recognizing that the foundations upon which our current society rests were laid during that pivotal era. The financial systems we engage with today, including credit markets, bond markets, and the very concept of sovereign debt as a perpetual state, are direct descendants of what Britain meticulously constructed in the 17th and 18th centuries. As governments amass trillions in debt today, funding wars through borrowed money rather than taxation, and as investors profit from conflicts that devastate ordinary lives, we find ourselves reliving an age-old narrative. Although Britain may no longer dominate global seas or territories, the financial model it crafted continues to wield power over modern affairs. Reflect on the global crises witnessed just within the last century. The First World War was financed through unprecedented levels of debt, with Britain heavily reliant on American bankers to sustain its war efforts and economic stability. This historical context underscores how interconnected our financial systems remain across time, an intricate web where past dynamics persistently echo in present realities. The Second World War significantly shifted the global balance, positioning the United States as a new financial powerhouse. This transformation echoed the British model, characterized by debt, bonds, and the intertwining of monetary influence with governmental authority. In contemporary discussions surrounding quantitative easing, sovereign bonds, or international financial aid programs, one can observe this same framework at play, where credit serves as a weapon and financial resources dictate the destinies of nations. The lesson drawn from the British financial empire is both straightforward and challenging to digest. True wealth extends beyond mere natural resources or industrial output. It fundamentally hinges on control over the financial apparatus itself. Those who issue bonds set the terms of engagement and regulate capital flows. They are the architects of historical narratives. Centuries ago, British bankers grasped this crucial concept, establishing a system that fostered an empire lasting far longer than any military triumph on the battlefield. This raises a pertinent question. Who holds this power in today's world? As we observe global debt soaring into the hundreds of trillions and conflicts appearing endless yet oddly well-funded, along with financial bubbles inflating and bursting, often leaving ordinary people in dire straits while bondholders remain unscathed, it compels us to ponder whether we have truly escaped this intricate web or if we continue to find ourselves ensnared within it. Economic history seems to suggest that we are still caught in its grasp. If there is a vital takeaway from all this, it is the undeniable importance of financial literacy. Understanding finances equips individuals to defend themselves against exploitation by the same forces that once constructed empires and decimated populations. It is essential to comprehend how money and power intertwine seamlessly. Challenge the notion of debts that you may be led to believe are unavoidable. Recognize when inflation, economic bubbles, or widespread crises are manipulated by others seeking personal gain at your expense. However, beneath this bureaucratic veneer lay a revolutionary transformation. The Bank of England institutionalized debt in ways previously unimagined. It converted fragile promises made by monarchs into tradable securities for investors. For the first time in history, English authorities could reliably secure loans at lower rates and scale unprecedented sums of money. This capability became Britain's covert weapon for imperial expansion. This reality underscores a critical truth. History does not merely repeat itself in a mechanical fashion. Rather, it evolves continuously. If you fail to comprehend these dynamics, you risk being crushed beneath their weight. By delving deeper into these concepts and gaining insight into financial systems, one can better navigate the complexities of our modern world and protect oneself from potential pitfalls. In doing so, you unlock a new perspective on economic realities that shape our lives today. Understanding these patterns empowers individuals to engage more thoughtfully with their economic environments and advocate for fairer practices within them. The interplay of finance and governance continues to influence our collective fate. Knowledge is indeed power in this ongoing narrative. With a stable system for public credit now firmly established, Britain found itself able to finance prolonged military campaigns long after its rivals had succumbed to bankruptcy under their own fiscal mismanagement. This newfound financial might enabled Britain to stretch its influence across continents while simultaneously fortifying its economic foundations at home. As wars raged on land and sea, London's financiers played an essential role in underwriting these conflicts by channeling funds into military operations while managing an extensive network of international trade routes. Each conflict bolstered their coffers further as they developed complex instruments for managing risk associated with lending during tumultuous times. Their ability to convert losses from failed ventures into opportunities for new investments epitomized their ingenious adaptability. The Bank of England emerged not just as an institution but as an integral part of Britain's identity, melding fiscal responsibility with imperial ambition in ways that resonate even today within global financial systems. Thus began an era where money became synonymous with power, a legacy that shaped not only Britain but also set precedents for other nations striving for similar paths toward prosperity through strategic financial governance. This remarkable evolution in financing warfare laid down foundations for modern banking practices while highlighting how economic strategies can redefine geopolitical landscapes over time. Such lessons echo throughout history as states navigate complexities surrounding finance and sovereignty, reminding us all that beneath every empire lies an intricate tapestry woven from debts both repaid and unpaid alike. France, Spain, and even the formidable Netherlands struggled under the weight of their debt obligations, while Britain consistently leveraged its burgeoning bond market. Each conflict had transformed into a financial contest, and Britain cleverly devised strategies to manipulate this competitive landscape.